Miles Woodson stared at the lines of code on his screen, his eyes burning from 18 straight hours of work. His revolutionary blockchain protocol, nicknamed Prometheus, was finally taking shape after 3 years of relentless development. At 38, he was betting everything on this technology that could decentralize the entire financial system while making transactions untraceable. "Daddy, you promised." The voice of his 9-year-old daughter, Chloe, pulled him from his digital trance. She stood in the doorway of his home office, clutching her science project materials. Miles glanced at his watch. 11:20 p.m. He'd completely forgotten about helping with her volcano. "I'm so sorry, Pumpkin." He rubbed his bloodshot eyes. "Let me save this, and I'll help you right now." "Mom already did it," Chloe mumbled, disappointed. "She said not to bother you because you're too busy making money that doesn't exist." The comments stung. Fiona, his wife of 12 years, had grown increasingly bitter about his work. She had married him when he was climbing the corporate ladder at Haventech Industries with a comfortable 6-figure salary. His decision 3 years ago to quit and pursue his blockchain vision had been a constant source of tension. "Is your mother still awake?" Miles asked. "She went out with her friends from the country club again," Chloe said quietly, looking down. "She said she needed adult conversation." Miles felt the familiar knot in his stomach tighten. These girls' nights had become more frequent lately. Last week, he'd found a receipt for a $300 dinner at Marina in her purse, far more extravagant than a casual night out. "Come here," he said, opening his arms. Chloe rushed into them. "I promise I'm going to make this all worth it. One day very soon, people will understand what I've been building." Later that night, Miles heard Fiona stumble in around 2 a.m., smelling of expensive whiskey and wearing a dress he didn't recognize. When she slipped into bed, he pretended to be asleep, too exhausted for another argument. The next morning, over coffee, Miles tried to bridge the growing gap between them. "I made a breakthrough yesterday," he said. "The protocol's alpha test worked perfectly. We're months ahead of schedule." Fiona looked up from her phone with practiced disinterest. At 36, she still turned heads with her polished beauty, maintained through rigorous fitness regimens and cosmetic treatments Miles could barely afford. "That's nice," she said flatly. "Did you remember we have the Wellington Foundation charity gala tomorrow night?" "I can't go," Miles said. The investor meeting with Phoenix Investments was moved up. "This could be our funding breakthrough." "Perfect," Fiona snapped, slamming her mug down. "I'll just go alone again. At least I won't have to explain crypto to confused patrons while you stand there looking like you haven't slept in weeks." "This isn't just crypto, Fiona. If Prometheus works." If, she cut him off. 3 years of if, Miles. Meanwhile, Chloe barely knows her father. "I'm using credit cards to maintain appearances, and you're chasing digital fairy gold." What Fiona didn't understand, or refused to, was that Miles wasn't creating just another cryptocurrency. Prometheus was designed to be unhackable, untraceable, and capable of processing transactions in milliseconds. If successful, it would revolutionize everything from banking to international trade. 6 more months, Miles promised. "That's all I need." "You said that 6 months ago," Fiona replied coldly. "And 6 months before that." The doorbell interrupted their standoff. Miles opened it to find his mentor and former professor, Arthur Grayson, standing there with a knowing smile. "Am I interrupting?" "I brought bagels," said the silver-haired academic, who'd first introduced Miles to blockchain technology during his graduate studies. "Arthur." Fiona's demeanor shifted instantly to charm mode. "What a lovely surprise." "Come in." Over breakfast, Arthur updated them on his connections at Remington Institute of Technology's digital currency initiative. They're working on similar protocols, but nothing as elegant as Prometheus. "Miles, your approach to the consensus mechanism is completely revolutionary." Miles noticed Fiona's expression changed slightly at this external validation. For years, she'd assumed his work was a pipe dream because none of their social circle understood it. The Wellington Foundation is looking to diversify their investment portfolio into blockchain, Arthur mentioned casually. They're hoping to find the next big innovation before it explodes. Fiona's eyebrows rose. The Wellingtons were old money in Eastport, pillars of the society she desperately wanted to join. Miles is presenting to potential investors tomorrow night, she said quickly. But perhaps the weekend after. I'll make the introduction, Arthur promised. They'll be impressed. After Arthur left, Fiona was uncharacteristically thoughtful. Maybe I've been too hard on you, she admitted, but you have to understand how difficult this has been. Miles embraced her, relief washing over him. It's almost over. Everything's about to change. What he couldn't know was how prophetic those words would prove, though not in the way he imagined. Later that week, at the charity gala Fiona attended alone, she would meet a man who would set in motion the complete unraveling of their lives. His name was Harvey Wynn, and he would take particular interest when Fiona mentioned her husband's blockchain project. The Phoenix Investments meeting was a disaster. The investors, a group of traditional finance types, couldn't grasp Miles's vision for Prometheus. So it's like Bitcoin? One asked dismissively. No, it's an entirely different. Miles had tried to explain before being cut off. We've seen crypto come and go. What makes you special? By the time Miles returned home, exhausted and defeated, Fiona was already back from the gala, humming as she removed her earrings in their bedroom. How was your meeting? She asked with unusual interest. They didn't get it. Miles sighed. How was the gala? Fiona's eyes lit up. Actually, I met someone you should talk to, Harvey Wynn. He runs Crescent Capital Partners and specifically invests in blockchain technology. Miles perked up. Really? Did you tell him about Prometheus? Just the basics, she smiled. He was fascinated. He wants to meet you. 3 days later, Miles sat across from Harvey Wynn at an upscale restaurant downtown. Wynn was everything Miles wasn't: polished, charismatic, with an ease that came from old money and elite schools. At 45, he exuded success from his tailored suit to his confident smile. Fiona described your project quite passionately, Wynn said, swirling his Bordeaux. Though I suspect she didn't grasp all the technical details. She tries, Miles said defensively. Of course. Wynn nodded sympathetically. It must be difficult having a vision others can't see. Tell me about Prometheus. Unlike the Phoenix Investments Group, Wynn asked insightful questions that showed genuine understanding. By dessert, Miles felt he'd finally found someone who recognized Prometheus's potential. I'd like my technical team to review your work, Wynn said. If it's as groundbreaking as it sounds, Crescent could offer substantial backing. Over the next weeks, Wynn became a fixture in their lives. He invited the Woodsons to exclusive events, sent gifts for Chloe, and arranged for Miles to pitch to serious tech investors. Fiona bloomed under his attention, dressing more expensively and laughing more freely than she had in years. Miles was too preoccupied with finalizing Prometheus to notice the subtle shifts. Fiona's lingering glances at Wynn, their private jokes, the way she touched her hair when he entered her room. Arthur Grayson noticed, however. After observing Fiona and Wynn at a tech conference reception, he pulled Miles aside. How much does Wynn know about your algorithms? He asked sharply. The general architecture, Miles replied. Nothing proprietary. What? Something feels off, Arthur frowned. I checked his background. Crescent Capital has a pattern of investing in startups, gaining access to their IP, then abandoning them after filing competing patents. Harvey wouldn't do that, Miles said. He gets the vision. Just be careful what you share, Arthur warned, and maybe pay more attention to your wife. Miles dismissed the warning as paranoia, but a seed of doubt was planted. That night, he came home early and overheard Fiona on the phone in their bedroom. He doesn't suspect anything, she was saying softly. He's completely focused on the launch. Yes, I've seen the documents, but they're password protected. I know what's at stake, Harvey. Miles froze, heart pounding. He backed away silently, mind racing. In his home office, he checked his security logs and discovered someone had attempted to access his protected files from Fiona's laptop. The next morning, instead of confronting her, Miles set a trap. He created a folder labeled Prometheus_final_algorithms containing altered code that would appear legitimate to non-experts but would catastrophically fail if implemented. He deliberately mentioned the folder to Fiona over dinner. 3 years of work, finally compiled in one place, he said. The patent attorney needs it by Tuesday. That night, he installed a keystroke logger on their home network and went to bed early, claiming exhaustion. At 1:23 a.m., his phone alerted him. The honeypot folder had been accessed and copied to a USB drive. Miles lay in the darkness beside his sleeping wife, a cold clarity washing over him. Instead of confrontation, he chose calculation. He would let the trap play out while accelerating his real work on Prometheus. The betrayal crystallized something in him, a ruthless resolve that burned away his former trust, replaced by icy determination. By morning, he had formulated a plan that would not only protect his work, but would eventually make Fiona and Wen pay dearly for their treachery. You seem different, Fiona commented over breakfast, studying his face. Miles smiled pleasantly, just excited. Things are finally coming together. She had no idea how true that was, or that the man sitting across from her had fundamentally changed overnight. The old Miles, trusting, somewhat naive, consumed by his vision, had died in the darkness. What remained was something far more dangerous, a brilliant mind fueled by betrayal. Over the next 2 months, Miles played an elaborate charade. On the surface, he continued working feverishly on Prometheus, while appearing increasingly distracted and despondent. He deliberately left financial statements showing dwindling resources around the house and started forgetting important social events. Mom says you're having a breakdown, Chloe said one evening as Miles taught her chess in his office, the one place he was certain wasn't bugged. What do you think? Miles asked carefully. Chloe studied the board before moving her knight. I think you're playing a long game, like in chess. Miles smiled at his daughter's perceptiveness. Sometimes, Pumpkin, when people think you're losing, it gives you an advantage they don't expect. Behind the scenes, Miles had secretly completed the real Prometheus protocol, storing the authentic code on servers only he could access. The version at home was an elaborate decoy, functional enough to seem legitimate, but missing the revolutionary elements that made Prometheus truly valuable. Meanwhile, he hired a private investigator to document Fiona's affair with Wen. The evidence mounted quickly: hotel rendezvous, intimate dinners, and explicit text messages about stealing Miles's technology and money. Most painful was discovering Fiona had involved Chloe in their schemes. The investigator's photos showed Wen taking Chloe for ice cream, buying her expensive gifts, and gradually positioning himself as a father figure. In several photos, Chloe looked uncomfortable but compliant. He's manipulating my daughter, Miles muttered, staring at the images. There's more, the investigator said grimly, sliding over divorce papers already drafted in Fiona's name. They're planning something soon. The lawyer is known for aggressive settlements that leave spouses with nothing. Father's Day fell on a Sunday in mid-June. The evening before, Miles received a text from Arthur. Wen met with Zinneran investors claiming proprietary blockchain technology. Moving timeline up. Miles responded, proceeding as planned. Stand by. That night, he securely uploaded the real Prometheus protocol to Arthur's server with specific instructions. Launch only if you receive my signal or if I'm incapacitated for more than 72 hours. The next morning, Chloe bounced into their bedroom carrying a tray with burnt toast and coffee. Happy Father's Day, Daddy, she exclaimed. We've got a super special surprise for you. Fiona appeared, looking nervous but determined. We've been planning this for weeks, haven't we, sweetie? Miles noted the strain in her smile, and the way she avoided his eyes. He'd expected something today, but played along with practiced obliviousness. "What's my surprise?" he asked, pretending excitement. "You have to be blindfolded." Chloe giggled, producing a silk tie. "Is this necessary?" Miles asked, feigning reluctance. "No peeking." Fiona insisted, tying it around his eyes. "It's tradition for big surprises." Miles felt himself guided downstairs and into their car. The drive lasted about 20 minutes before they stopped. "Almost there," Fiona said, her voice tight as she led him into a building and down a hallway. When the blindfold came off, Miles found himself in an elegantly appointed office facing a stern-looking woman behind a mahogany desk. Harvey Wynn sat in a corner chair, failing to hide the triumph in his eyes. "Mr. Woodson," the woman said professionally. "I'm Irene Caldwell. Your wife felt this setting might help keep things civil." On the desk lay a stack of documents, divorce papers demanding 75% of all assets and intellectual property, full custody of Chloe and their house. "Sign these, and we can all move on," Fiona said coldly. "Harvey has kindly offered to mediate." Miles looked at his daughter, who stood confused by the door, clearly not understanding what was happening. He saw the moment she realized this wasn't a happy surprise, her face crumpling in betrayal. "You told me we were giving Daddy a special day," Chloe whispered. "Grown-up business, sweetie." Fiona dismissed her. "Wait in the hall." As Chloe left, tears streaming down her face, something hardened permanently in Miles. He turned to Caldwell with surprising calm. "May I review these documents?" For 2 hours, Miles meticulously read every page, while Fiona grew increasingly agitated, and Wynn checked his watch repeatedly. Finally, Miles looked up. "And if I don't sign?" "We go to court," Caldwell replied, "where evidence of your mental instability, financial mismanagement, and parental neglect will be presented." Miles nodded thoughtfully. "I see." With deliberate slowness, he signed every page. He wore an unreadable expression, but a slight smile flickered when he reached the clause about intellectual property transfer. "Congratulations on your freedom, Fiona," Miles said quietly as he stood to leave. "I hope it brings you everything you deserve." In the hallway, he knelt before a tearful Chloe. "Did you know about this?" he asked gently. "Mom said we were surprising you with a special Father's Day," she sobbed. "She said the blindfold was part of the fun." "Listen carefully," Miles whispered, wiping her tears. "Sometimes things aren't what they seem. No matter what happens next, remember I love you more than anything in this world." As Miles walked away, Wynn emerged from the office with a triumphant smile. "No hard feelings, right? Business is business." Miles looked at him with cold intensity. "You know what the ancient myths said about Prometheus. He wasn't just punished for stealing fire. He was punished for giving power to those who didn't understand its consequences." With that cryptic statement, Miles walked out, leaving his soon-to-be ex-wife and her lover believing they had won. They couldn't have been more wrong. The week following the divorce ambush was precisely orchestrated chaos. Miles moved into a modest apartment across town, while Fiona and Wynn celebrated their victory with a weekend in Crestshore. Photos of them on Wynn's yacht circulated among their social circle, cementing Miles's humiliation. What no one saw was Miles in a secure basement facility at Remington Institute of Technology, working furiously with Arthur Grayson to launch the authentic Prometheus protocol. While Wynn's technical team struggled with the sabotaged code, Miles activated the final version on a protected network. "They'll realize soon that the code they stole is fundamentally flawed," Arthur observed as they monitored the deployment. "By then, it won't matter," Miles replied, eyes fixed on the screens showing transaction processing speeds that shattered all existing records. Prometheus wasn't merely a new cryptocurrency. It was an entirely new framework for digital value exchange, with military-grade security protocols. While Bitcoin processed 7 transactions per second, Prometheus handled over 10,000, maintaining perfect anonymity. On day 6 after the divorce, Chloe called Miles in tears. "Mom's changing all the locks," she sobbed. She says I can't see you until the custody hearing. Did you secure what I asked for? Miles asked calmly. Yes, Chloe whispered. I put your backup drives and papers from your safe in the hollow tree, like you showed me. Good girl, Miles said. Remember our chess lessons. This is just the opening game. That night, Miles retrieved the hidden materials, including evidence of Fiona's affair, financial documentation, and proof that his intellectual property had been developed long before Wynne entered the picture. The next morning, he received a call from Nathan Cross, his divorce attorney. They filed an emergency motion claiming you're hiding assets, Nathan reported. There's something else. Wynne has submitted patent applications remarkably similar to your work. Right on schedule, Miles noted calmly. You don't seem surprised, Nathan observed. I'm not, Miles replied. File our counter-motion immediately with Exhibits A through F. Those exhibits contain devastating evidence. Fiona's documented affair, her attempts to access Miles's secure files, and Wynne's pattern of intellectual property theft from previous startups. By week's end, the legal momentum shifted dramatically. The judge, initially sympathetic to Fiona's claims, now viewed the case with skepticism. Miles' apparent cooperation, signing the divorce papers without contest, had created the impression of a man with nothing to hide. Meanwhile, Chloe's court-appointed advocate reported the child's distress at being used in the Father's Day deception, further damaging Fiona's custody position. 10 days after the divorce, Miles sat alone in his apartment, monitoring cryptocurrency exchanges worldwide as Prometheus quietly went live. Unlike typical crypto launches with flashy marketing, Prometheus was introduced through trusted channels to specific high-value users seeking absolute transaction privacy. While Wynne pursued patents for the flawed technology, the real Prometheus began processing millions in transactions, its value climbing steadily without drawing mainstream attention. Miles's phone rang. Fiona, for the first time since the ambush. We need to talk, she said without preamble. Harvey's team says there are problems with the code. What a surprise, Miles replied flatly. Don't be childish, she snapped. We're offering $50,000 for consultation services to fix the issues. Miles laughed softly. $50,000 for 3 years of work. Your boyfriend must be getting desperate. $100,000, she countered quickly. Goodbye, Fiona. 2 days later, the offer had risen to $500,000. Miles ignored each call, focused instead on Prometheus's growth and careful documentation of Wynne's frantic attempts to salvage the stolen code. While Wynne's technical team floundered, the authentic Prometheus protocol gained traction in exclusive financial circles. Its perfect transaction record and unprecedented security features attracted serious attention from privacy-focused investors. 18 days after the divorce, Chloe slipped away during a shopping trip with her mother and showed up at Miles' apartment unannounced. Mom and Harvey fight all the time now, she reported, sitting cross-legged on his couch. He keeps saying you sabotaged something, and she says he promised he'd checked the code before. Miles asked strategic questions. Chloe answered with the directness of a child, not fully understanding the implications. He has people watching our house, she added. I saw them in a car outside. Miles' expression hardened. Has he threatened you? No, but... Chloe hesitated. Yesterday, he said if you wouldn't help fix the problems, they might need to convince you another way. Miles took photos of a bruise on Chloe's arm, where Wynne had grabbed her during an argument, and immediately called his attorney. We need an emergency custody hearing, he insisted, filing for a restraining order against Wynne. The next day, the cryptocurrency world woke to news of a mysterious new protocol, showing transaction volumes that dwarfed established networks. Speculation about the creator of Prometheus spread through financial channels, especially among Zinneran investors who had recently been approached by Wynne with promises of revolutionary technology. 23 days after the divorce, Miles sat in court as temporary custody of Chloe was transferred to him. Following revelations of the bruise incident and Chloe's testimony about the hostile environment, Fiona, disheveled and clearly stressed, approached Miles in the courthouse hallway. "What have you done?" she hissed. "Harvey's investors are threatening legal action. They've discovered the Prometheus Code is worthless. We're ruined. The house is mortgaged to fund development, and now I've lost Chloe too." Miles felt only a cold satisfaction. How unfortunate. "Is it true that the real Prometheus Code was never at home?" she demanded. "Perhaps you should have verified what you were stealing before you stole it," Miles replied. "We're ruined," she repeated, her voice breaking. "I barely recognize my life. Can't you help?" "Chess lesson number 1, Miles said quietly. "Never assume you understand the game your opponent is playing." He walked away, holding Chloe's hand. Moments later, his phone buzzed with a text from Arthur. "Prometheus just crossed 1 billion in transaction volume. Time to go public." Miles smiled down at his daughter. "How would you like to see your dad's work finally pay off? Will it make you happy again?" she asked. "I'm already happy," he said, squeezing her hand. "I have what matters most." What he didn't say was that his happiness now coexisted with something darker, a cold determination to see his betrayers face the full consequences of their actions. The real game was just beginning. Miles chose an unassuming name for his corporate entity, Prometheus Systems. He established it using a complex web of LLCs that obscured his direct ownership while maintaining absolute control. From a converted warehouse that served as both office and temporary home for him and Chloe, he began building his empire. "Why are we living here instead of getting a nice house?" Chloe asked one evening, doing homework at a folding table while Miles monitored international crypto exchanges. "What does chess teach us about appearing weak when you're strong?" Miles countered. "Make your opponent underestimate you," she replied promptly. "Exactly." He smiled. "Right now, everyone thinks your dad is a broken man who lost everything." In reality, Miles's position strengthened daily. Prometheus's underlying protocol processed over $3 billion in transactions in its first month, generating substantial mining fees that flowed back to Prometheus Systems through untraceable channels. Meanwhile, Harvey Wynn faced mounting disasters. The Zinneran investors who had fronted $20 million for the revolutionary blockchain discovered the stolen code was fundamentally flawed. Their subsequent lawsuit named both Wynn and Fiona, freezing their assets. Fiona, now living in Wynn's downtown penthouse, found herself juggling the fallout when the divorce court appointed a forensic accountant who discovered she had diverted household funds to private accounts months before the divorce. Miles tracked these developments through his attorney while methodically executing Phase 2 of his plan, legitimizing Prometheus for mainstream adoption. 45 days after the divorce, Miles arranged a meeting with Sylvia Torres, CEO at Apex Transfer, a digital payment processor struggling against larger competitors. In a secure conference room, Miles demonstrated Prometheus's capabilities. "This processes how many transactions per second?" Torres asked incredulously. 20,000 in the current implementation, Miles replied, with potential to scale to 50,000. "And the security protocol? Quantum-resistant encryption with perfect forward secrecy, essentially unhackable with current technology." Torres studied him. "Why come to Apex Transfer? With this technology, any major player would give you billions." "Because you'll give me something more valuable than money," Miles explained. "Complete anonymity while we scale. The major players would want their branding, their control. I need a partner willing to follow my implementation timeline precisely." The deal they struck would later be recognized as one of the most lopsided in financial technology history. Apex Transfer received non-exclusive implementation rights to Prometheus in exchange for 30% of transaction fees and a critical clause. Miles' identity would remain completely confidential. With institutional backing secured, Prometheus began its controlled expansion. Apex Transfer stock surged 400% in 2 weeks as they announced a revolutionary new processing system that protected user privacy while drastically reducing costs. 60 days after the divorce, Arthur Grayson visited the warehouse headquarters with news from academic circles. Remington Institute wants to give you the Pioneer in Digital Economics Award, he announced. Your protocol has been analyzed by their cryptography team, and they're calling it the most significant advancement since Bitcoin. Decline politely, Miles instructed. The time isn't right for public recognition. Instead, he focused on establishing the infrastructure for Project Nemesis, a specialized application of Prometheus technology that could trace and expose hidden financial transactions without being detected. He assembled a team of brilliant cryptographers and engineers sworn to secrecy and compensated with Prometheus tokens, now worth millions. Your mission, he told them, is to create perfect financial transparency, where anonymity currently exists. 70 days after the divorce, Miles received intelligence that Wynn had leveraged his remaining assets to short Apex transfer stock, believing the surge was a temporary bubble. The irony wasn't lost on Miles. Wynn was betting against the very technology he'd tried to steal. While Prometheus flourished, Miles maintained his modest lifestyle, focusing on raising Chloe in a healthier environment far from Fiona's toxic influence. The custody arrangement allowed Fiona's supervised visitation, which she increasingly canceled as her finances and legal troubles mounted. "Does Mom not want to see me anymore?" Chloe asked after the third consecutive cancellation. "Your mother is going through a difficult time," Miles answered carefully. "Some people find it hard to face those they've hurt." 85 days after the divorce, the financial world was rocked by a Bloomberg article analyzing the explosive growth of the Prometheus protocol and speculating about its anonymous creator. The piece estimated the unknown developer's holdings at around $3.7 billion, making them one of the wealthiest in cryptocurrency. The day after publication, Fiona called Miles for the first time in weeks. "I know what you've done," she said, her voice a mixture of anger and desperation. "The real Prometheus was never in our home system, was it? You're only now figuring that out," Miles replied. "Disappointing. Harvey is ruined," she continued. "The investor lawsuits, legal fees, we're selling the penthouse. He blames me for not getting better access to your work." "How tragic," Miles responded without inflection. "I assume that's why you've been canceling Chloe's visits." "I can't face her," Fiona admitted, her voice breaking. "Not like this. Broke, evicted, with legal troubles. This isn't the life I wanted. Choices have consequences, Fiona. You chose Wynn. You chose deception. You chose to use our daughter in your schemes." "I made a terrible mistake," she whispered. "Is there any way we could?" "No," Miles interrupted firmly. "There isn't." After hanging up, Miles received an alert from his monitoring system. Someone had attempted to access his old financial records. The source traced back to Wynn's private server. Even facing ruin, Harvey Wynn was still searching for leverage. Convinced he could outsmart the man he had grievously underestimated. Time for the endgame. Miles murmured, opening his secure messaging system to activate the final phase of Project Nemesis. 90 days after the divorce, Miles Woodson disappeared completely from public view, his modest apartment emptied overnight. Chloe was temporarily placed with Arthur Grayson, who cited a family emergency requiring Miles's immediate attention overseas. In truth, Miles had moved to a secure compound outside Clearwater Bay, where Project Nemesis entered its final implementation stage. From this fortified location surrounded by his elite team, Miles prepared to unveil the full power of Prometheus, not just as a revolutionary financial technology, but as an instrument of perfect, inescapable justice. The disappearance coincided with rumors in financial circles of a major announcement about Prometheus's creator. The cryptocurrency's value surged in anticipation, crossing the threshold that would officially make its anonymous developer a billionaire. A simple press release from Prometheus Systems announced, "The developer known as Prometheus will address the World Economic Technology Summit in Vallenham, Ravendale, via secure video link on Thursday." The countdown to revelation had begun. The Vallenham Summit in Ravendale attracted the global financial elite, CEOs, central bankers, and technology visionaries gathered to discuss the future of money. The unscheduled appearance of Prometheus's creator sent shockwaves through the conference. In an Eastport apartment, Harvey Wynn and Fiona Woodson watched the live stream. Their once luxurious surroundings replaced by rented furniture. Wynn had aged visibly since the divorce debacle, his confident demeanor eroded by nervous agitation. "This could be our chance," he muttered, pouring his third scotch of the morning. "If we can prove a connection to your ex-husband's work." Fiona's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Watch carefully." Her blood ran cold. "Harvey, I think Miles is behind this announcement." On stage in Vallenham, the moderator addressed the packed auditorium. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're honored to present a secure transmission from the creator of the Prometheus Protocol, whose identity has remained the financial world's greatest mystery." A massive screen illuminated with the Prometheus symbol, a stylized figure holding digital fire. A digitally altered voice spoke. "Prometheus stole fire from the gods to empower humanity. Today, I'm revealing how this new financial fire can illuminate what has long remained hidden." The voice explained that Prometheus wasn't merely a transaction protocol, but a sophisticated system capable of tracing and verifying complex financial movements through anonymity shields once considered impenetrable. "To demonstrate," the voice continued, "I've selected a case study involving systematic intellectual property theft and financial fraud." The screen changed to display familiar faces: Harvey Wynn and several Zinneran investors at a meeting dated 3 weeks before Miles's divorce. Documents appeared, showing Wynn had received $36 million from Zinneran state-backed funds in exchange for technology he did not own. Bank records revealed how he moved the money through 17 jurisdictions. In Eastport, Wynn lunged for his phone. "We need to leave now. If the feds see this." The apartment door crashed open as federal agents swarmed in, weapons drawn. "Harvey Wynn, you're under arrest for wire fraud, intellectual property theft, and violations of the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act." As Wynn was handcuffed, an agent approached Fiona. "Fiona Woodson, we have some questions about your involvement in Mr. Wynn's activities." In Vallenham, the presentation continued, meticulously documenting how Prometheus had tracked these once-hidden transactions. Banking executives shifted uncomfortably, seeing a system that rendered traditional financial secrecy obsolete. Near the conclusion, the voice made an announcement that sent cryptocurrency markets into a frenzy. "Today, I'm transferring control of the Prometheus Foundation to a consortium of international universities. My personal holdings, valued at approximately $5.6 billion, will fund research into ethical implementations of this technology." A new screen showed the Foundation's inaugural board of directors. Distinguished cryptographers, ethicists, and economists. Among them was Arthur Grayson, listed as acting director. As global media exploded with the news, Miles Woodson sat in his Clearwater Bay compound, watching multiple screens. One showed the Vallenham presentation, another displayed Wynn being led to a police vehicle, and a third monitored cryptocurrency exchanges where Prometheus tokens surged to unprecedented values. A secure phone rang. It was Arthur. "It's working perfectly," he reported. "The Justice Department is already requesting access to Prometheus for their Financial Crimes Division." "They'll have it," Miles replied, "with specific limitations." After hanging up, Miles opened his laptop to confirm one final operation: the complete financial destruction of those who had betrayed him. Wynn's assets were frozen by federal authorities. The Zinneran investors faced their own government's wrath for a failed operation. Fiona's involvement had been deeper than initially assumed. Her finances were in shambles, her reputation destroyed, her credit ruined. The house she'd wanted was underwater in debt. Any alimony she'd counted on was voided by evidence of her affair and conspiracy. The revenge Miles had crafted wasn't merely about punishment, it was about irreversible consequence. There would be no recovery for Wynn or Fiona. They had tried to destroy him and had instead destroyed themselves. Miles's phone lit up again with a familiar number. "Fiona." the first of what would become dozens of desperate calls. He declined without hesitation as he packed a suitcase. The next day, he and Chloe moved into their new home, a modest but comfortable lakeside property chosen for its security rather than ostentation. He had no interest in the trappings of wealth that had so obsessed Fiona. That evening, as news channels worldwide reported on the crypto-billionaire divorce scandal, Miles sat with Chloe, watching the sunset over the lake. "Is it over now?" she asked softly. "The hard part is," Miles confirmed, putting his arm around her shoulders. "Mom called my school," Chloe said quietly. "She was crying, asking about me." Miles considered his response carefully. The ruthlessness that had driven his revenge didn't extend to poisoning Chloe against her mother. "Your mother made terrible choices," he said finally, "but she does love you in her way. Can I see her sometimes?" "If you want to," Miles replied. "That's your choice. What about you?" Chloe asked. "Will you ever forgive her?" Miles looked out at the darkening sky, his expression hardening. "No, Chloe. Some betrayals don't get forgiveness." The media never connected Miles Woodson to the Prometheus protocol. As far as the world knew, the brilliant developer remained anonymous. Only a small circle, Arthur Grayson, Miles's core team, and eventually Chloe when she was old enough, knew the truth. The man who had revolutionized global finance had done so partly to create the perfect vehicle for justice against those who had betrayed him. And justice in Miles Woodson's world came without mercy. Recent divorcee, single dad, become crypto-billionaire. The headlines splashed across financial news sites a week after the Valinam revelation. While the article didn't name Miles, the timing and circumstances left little doubt for those involved. Fiona had called Miles 78 times in 7 days. Each call declined without comment. The Prometheus Foundation opened headquarters in Adelton, with Arthur Grayson guiding its integration into legitimate financial systems. Federal prosecutors built what they called airtight cases against Wynne and his co-conspirators, using evidence provided through the Prometheus system. 6 months after the divorce, Miles and Chloe settled into a new routine in a quiet suburb near Clearwater Bay. Their home, modern but understated, sat on 5 secure acres beside a private lake. Miles worked remotely as a blockchain consultant, his connection to Prometheus known only to a trusted few. "Dad, someone's here to see you," Chloe called one Saturday morning. "She says she's your ex-wife." Miles found Fiona standing in the entryway, significantly changed from the polished socialite who once orchestrated his humiliation. Her designer clothes were replaced by simple attire, her confident posture diminished. "How did you find us?" Miles asked coldly. "I hired a private investigator," Fiona admitted. "It took most of my remaining money. You shouldn't be here." Fiona's voice trembled. "They'd frozen all Harvey's assets. I have nothing left. The house is in foreclosure, my credit is destroyed, and no one in our old circle will speak to me." "Consequences," Miles replied simply. "I know you're behind Prometheus," she pressed. "The timing, the technology, it can't be coincidence." Miles' expression remained impassive. "You should leave." "I made a terrible mistake," Fiona pleaded, tears forming. "I was frustrated, impatient. Harvey manipulated me with promises." "Stop," Miles interrupted sharply. "You weren't manipulated. You were greedy and disloyal. You used our daughter in your schemes." "I still love you," she whispered. Something flickered in Miles's eyes. Not compassion, but disgust. "Is that what this is about? You lost your rich boyfriend and your lifestyle, so now you love me again. Now that I have what you always wanted." "It's not like that," she protested weakly. "You blindfolded me and led me to a divorce lawyer on Father's Day." Miles reminded her, his voice dangerously controlled. "You conspired to steal everything I'd built. You chose Harvey over your family. There is no coming back from that. Ever." Fiona's desperation turned to anger. "You cold fiend. You engineered all of this. Harvey's arrest, my financial ruin, for revenge." "No," Miles corrected. I built something revolutionary and protected what was mine. What happened to you and Harvey was your own doing. After Fiona left, Chloe appeared, clearly having overheard part of the conversation. Mom looked really sad. She is sad, Miles acknowledged. Sometimes people make choices that lead to sadness. Like choosing the wrong person. Chloe asked with unsettling perception. Yes, Miles confirmed. Like that. That evening, Arthur Grayson called with disturbing news. Wynne made bail this afternoon. His legal team claimed prosecutorial misconduct. How? Miles demanded. The evidence is irrefutable. They're arguing that Prometheus tracking violated privacy laws, Arthur explained. It's tenuous, but it bought him temporary freedom. I'm more concerned about his mental state. He was overheard making threats against you. Miles intensified security measures at home, but refused to disrupt Chloe's routine. We don't live in fear, he told his security chief. We prepare and remain vigilant. 3 days later, Miles received an encrypted message from an anonymous source. Surveillance photos of him and Chloe at her school, at grocery stores, at soccer practice. The message contained one line. You took everything from me. Now we're even. Miles immediately moved Chloe to their secured lake house while implementing a counter-surveillance operation. Using Prometheus's capabilities, he tracked the digital footprint of the threat to a motel outside Clearwater Bay, where Wynne had checked in under a false name. Rather than involving authorities, Miles went to the motel himself, accompanied by 2 private security contractors. The confrontation in room 114 was brief and definitive. Wynne, unshaven and clearly unhinged, reached for a weapon but was quickly subdued. You ruined me. Wynne spat as he was pinned to the floor. Everything I built, gone. You built nothing, Miles replied coldly. You're a thief who finally stole from someone who could fight back. Miles confiscated Wynne's laptop, containing not only the surveillance photos, but also plans to kidnap Chloe for ransom. This evidence was anonymously delivered to the U.S. Marshals Service, resulting in Wynne's bail being revoked and additional charges filed. 2 weeks later, federal prosecutors approached Miles through intermediaries, seeking testimony in their expanding case against Wynne's network. I'll cooperate fully, Miles agreed, under one condition: complete anonymity. For the next month, Miles provided testimony via secure video link, his identity protected by court order. The evidence expanded the case beyond Wynne to include corrupt patent officials, compromised judges, and Zinneran intelligence officers who had backed the technology theft. They also discovered Fiona's deeper involvement, email records showing she had been feeding Wynne information about Miles's work for almost a year, motivated by promised millions once Prometheus was stolen. When confronted, Fiona accepted a plea deal in exchange for immunity. She chose self-preservation again, Arthur observed when Miles shared the news. Surprised? Not at all, Miles replied. The federal case expanded into national security implications as prosecutors argued that Wynne's theft attempt was economic espionage. Meanwhile, Prometheus continued extraordinary growth. Under the Foundation's guidance, it was adopted by major institutions worldwide, revolutionizing everything from wire transfers to micropayments. 9 months after the divorce, Miles and Chloe thrived in their new life. She was now 11, resilient and insightful. He dated occasionally, always with caution. You deserve happiness too, Arthur told him during a chess match. I am happy, Miles insisted, moving his knight. I have Chloe, meaningful work, and peace. That's more than most achieve. The conversation was cut short by an urgent call from security. Unauthorized individuals had been spotted surveilling the property perimeter. Miles calmly initiated the protocol to secure Chloe and dispatched drones to identify the intruders. Within 20 minutes, 3 men were captured, a private intelligence team funded by unknown sources. Specialized equipment traced back to Zinneran contractors who had once backed Wynne. They never stopped looking for you, Arthur realized. The Zinneran government still wants the creator of Prometheus. "They won't find him," Miles replied. "But this means we accelerate our contingency plan." That contingency was a complete legal and digital dissociation between Miles Woodson and Prometheus. Even if his identity surfaced, no one could prove he had created Prometheus or lay claim to the technology. His personal wealth was similarly shielded. "What about Chloe?" Arthur asked. "She knows. She understands operational security better than most adults. But we'll add more precautions." 2 days after the breach, Miles got an encrypted message from Brent Munro, a former colleague now at the National Security Agency. "Need to meet. Urgent." The meeting at a secure NSA facility revealed Wynn was communicating with Zinneran intelligence from prison, offering something called Prometheus Zero, claiming it was Miles's original prototype. Could he have accessed early versions? Munro asked. "No," Miles answered firmly. "He's desperate." Fiona was released earlier than expected, Munro added. "Our sources say she might act as an intermediary." "Be careful." Miles initiated the final security protocol he'd hoped never to use. Complete digital and physical dissociation. Within 48 hours, he and Chloe relocated to a fallback position impossible to trace to the name Miles Woodson. "Is this like witness protection?" Chloe asked as they packed essentials. "Similar, but better," Miles explained. "We're not running away. We're disappearing on our terms." Before leaving, Miles delivered a comprehensive intelligence package to federal authorities, detailing Wynn's ongoing criminal activities and ties to foreign agents. Would it be enough to stop him? Possibly not, but it would slow him down. 26 months after the Father's Day betrayal, Harvey Wynn emerged from federal prison, ostensibly for medical treatment under house arrest. That same day, Miles and Chloe vanished from their Clearwater Bay compound. In their place remained an automated monitoring system watching Wynn's every move. 3 days after Wynn's release, he met with Fiona at a hotel in Calverton. Their conversation, captured by Miles's system, revealed desperate plans to con Zinneran contacts with fake code. "We deliver encrypted files that look legitimate and disappear before they know," Wynn insisted. Neither Wynn nor Fiona realized their calls were routed through servers controlled by Miles's system. When Wynn contacted his Zinneran handlers, the meeting location was altered, the verification protocols manipulated. As Wynn tried to create false documentation, invisible markers were inserted to expose the fraud. Miles watched this digital chess game from a secure location, always 3 moves ahead. "Is this revenge or justice?" Arthur asked during a secure call. "At this point, the distinction is academic," Miles said. "It's survival." 30 days after Wynn's release, he and Fiona traveled to Argus City for a rendezvous with Zinneran tech investors. Instead, Zinneran security agents, armed with proof of the fraud, arrested them. Within hours, both had disappeared into Zenora's opaque detention system, beyond any American legal rescue. "It's over," Arthur said when the news was confirmed. "They'll never threaten you or Chloe again. It was always going to end this way for them," Miles replied. "People who survive by betrayal eventually run out of trust to exploit." 3 months later, in a villa overlooking the Mediterranean, in a fictional location far from prying eyes, Miles watched Chloe swim in their private cove. Their new identities were flawless. Their security was unobtrusive but impenetrable. Miles had foregone any public acknowledgement for creating Prometheus. He had traded fame for his daughter's safety and the quiet life he now cherished. That evening, as they watched the sunset, Chloe asked, "Are we ever going back to our real lives?" "This is our real life now," Miles said gently. "The people we were before exist only in memories." "What about Mom?" she asked. "Will we ever know what happened to her?" "She made choices that took her beyond our reach," Miles answered. "Some people can't escape the consequences of what they've done." "Did you love her once?" Chloe pressed. "Very much," he admitted. "But people change, or show who they really are eventually." "Will you ever forgive her?" Miles's answer came with the same unwavering resolve. "No, Chloe. Some betrayals don't get forgiveness. The Mediterranean sunset painted the sky in brilliant oranges and purples as they sat in companionable silence. Miles had lost much: his name, his public identity, the open recognition for his creation. Yet he had protected what mattered most: his daughter, and the revolutionary technology that would continue transforming the world. The fire he had stolen from the gods of finance now burned brightly across the global system, illuminating darkness that once seemed impenetrable. Like the mythological figure whose name he borrowed, he had accepted exile as the cost of defying the established order. But unlike Prometheus, Miles Woodson had escaped the eagle's talons by turning their hunger against them, ensuring that those who sought to destroy him were themselves destroyed. It was not forgiveness. It was not mercy. It was perfect, inescapable justice, cold as code and absolute as mathematics.